It's me, Gabriela, and welcome to the second episode of Auténtico Podcast special series, Mente Maestra with Karlos Ramirez. If you haven't already listened in, make sure to check out Carlos's debut and his conversation with Jomo Castro and Robert Clark on leadership and fatherhood. Today, Carlos is back with guests Facundo, Oyenard, and TC Slater, talking about building strong communities when men champion women. And before they get started, Carlos and I are checking in. Carlos, ¿cómo estás?
I'm doing well. Excited about today's episode, and getting the hang of being a podcast host has been something that I've liked way more than I anticipated. I was blown away by the points made and happy to hear that I'm not alone in my thoughts of championing women. I'm looking forward to the comments from our listeners and hearing from other men and their experiences in championing women. The opportunity to connect with inspiring leaders and share their stories and insights has been a lot of fun. And I'm so grateful for the support of our listeners and the incredible community of leaders who join us. And of course, you, Gabriela. It definitely takes a little getting used to. So let's listen in on today's episode on building strong communities when men champion women with Karlos, Facundo, and Cortés. Hola, hola, and welcome to the second episode of Mente Maestra. I'm your host, Karlos Ramirez, and I'm so excited to bring to you building strong communities when men champion women. So excited to welcome Facundo Oyenard and TC Cortés Slater. Facundo, Cortés, it's an honor to have you both.
Great to be here. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Same here.
All right, fantastic. Let's dive right in. Facundo, can you start by telling us a little bit about your personal journey and how you became a champion for women in your community or organization?
Yeah, I think it started when I was very young. I truly have some key role models. Started with my mom when she was working full time, supporting a big part of the family. Then I moved here when I moved to the US, and I started working with my cousin. So I started seeing that, okay, she's a strong lawyer, female. She was actually fighting for more women champion. So that was my second kind of key role model. And then I started working at a large corporation where most of my colleagues and some of my managers and actually leads were females. So early in my life, early in my career, had a lot of female great champions and promoting women. And also then I got married, as you know, and my wife is a worker, mom, wife. So I truly have had key role models since I was 9 years old when my mom started. So that's how I started the journey. And then I have 2 young daughters. So I am surrounded by women at home. So I continue to support women, and I do it because I truly see the value and I just enjoy it. And women are strong. I always joke that women are stronger than men because there's no way I could have a kid, no way I could have been pregnant. And so women are, for me, my personal opinion, women are stronger than men. So I have been supporting women championships. So.
Thanks so much. That is an awesome insight. And I've often said the same thing about women's intuition. There's so much strength there. And so now, Cortés, given that you coach women's basketball, I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer.
Yeah, similar to Facundo, mine started very early on. I'll even say 1985 when my younger sister was born. And if you let her tell it, as far as about my inclusion and championing women, like I would always include her in basketball games and different activities and things of that nature, not letting her be left to the side. My involvement has been highlighted by the birth of my daughter in 2002. And then also early in my marriage, I'm also married, and Facundo, I'm surrounded by women, but mine, my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, but that's another story. But no, early on in our marriage, we had to make a decision on whose career path to follow. And I started formally championing for her as we followed her career path as well. So that was one highlight in my lifespan. But then I also worked for a company called Easter Seals Midwest, a nonprofit here in the St. Louis region. And I was doing some training with them, and the women that I champion now, the girls that I champion now are teenagers, 11, 12, 13 years old for the most part. But they gave a statistic about suicide being a top killer among that age demographic. And it just surprised me that we're talking about, of all the things, automobile accidents, cancer, these big things, that suicide, it just astounded me that was such a negative impact on teenagers and young adults. So I had made a shift. I call them my midlife evolutions, not necessarily crisis, but I made a midlife evolution in my career path to follow, to go down the education career path and start adding value to that age demographic. And a lot of that ends up being impacting them to a more positive and self-fulfilling outcome.
That's so awesome. I love that you're saying that it's a midlife evolution.
Evolution. It's not a crisis. It's an evolution.
Yeah. And I think it's so nice to give ourselves grace. And that's really what this June Mente Maestra podcast has been about, is men's experiences and how we can impact other people. Obviously, we are men. So in many ways, there's the glass ceiling and whatnot, but there are ways that we can have an impact on that. And some of that is by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable. We covered a little bit about that in the first podcast, but just the fact that you're putting a positive lens on it, a midlife evolution speaks so much to it. My experience really has been started off very similar to Facundo's in that, in a Mexican household, you typically hear that it's a macho culture, the man's in charge, whatever. And I think very early on, my mom kind of like educated me on the women are in charge. We just let you think you're in charge, and when the decisions are happening, sure enough, that's exactly what's happening, that the women really are in charge. They're just, they find a way to maneuver the man, and it takes a lot of cleverness, a lot of harmony, a lot of being able to sit back and allow somebody to kind of lead from the back, really, because that's what women are often doing. And I worked for women and with women, being in that I was in education. I worked for so many years that I had women that were awesome champions for me, and in turn, I wanted to champion them as well. And so for me, it was always wanting to help people. It just so happened that I was surrounded by a lot of women. And the first year, another gentleman, it was a professor at Illinois State University, he wanted me to help him coach his daughter's soccer team. And, I was definitely into boys sports, men's sports, but I felt so badly for this guy because he was really kind of clueless. And I'll tell you what, that experience of coaching these young ladies was so extremely fulfilling. I felt like they were willing to run through walls for me, and I thought it was so cool that I was like, wow, this is probably even better than coaching little boys at this age, because they listen better. They're more attentive. They want to follow instructions, and it was so much better to have them in a coaching situation. So moving forward, given my student development background, now that I continue to hire people, I really find that oftentimes the women are going to be harder workers, and that stinks because I'm a man, right? And to say that as a man, but the reality was I found that over time, women were willing to work harder. And maybe that had to do because they felt they had to prove themselves. And so that's really interesting that has been my experience. And I continue to work, of course, I'm willing to work with anybody, but I feel like I've probably mentored more women than I have men. And part of that has to do with the vulnerability. The women are not afraid to get coached. They're not afraid to get helped out. Whereas men, I guess sometimes we're insecure and we're too cool for that or something. How have you guys seen male allies positively impact the advancement of women in the workplace or community? And can you provide specific examples? I know both of you kind of touched on what were the experiences that got you here, but what have you seen men do, or maybe a specific example of what you've done where you felt like, wow, this really has meant something to this woman's development, and maybe even talk about why it was fulfilling for you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start if you don't mind.
Yeah.
A couple of examples that come to mind first and foremost. So I just received a Coach of the Year award for girls basketball from the Illinois Basketball Coaches Association, right? But one of the things I look at is who's done it before me, who's paved the way. And I've been participating in O'Fallon Township High School's girls basketball camp for 5th through 8th graders this week. And I'm under the tutelage of Nick Nohoff, who's the head basketball coach at OTHS. And he's a 7-time Coach of the Year, again, for girls basketball for his division. So I look at the efforts, the pathways that he's made, because I talk to my girls all the time. Like, yes, I want you to be a better person. Yes, I want you to be a better basketball player, but we're about to leverage this so that someone else pays for your education. So looking at college and so forth. So looking at the trampoline effect or the launching pad that his program has been to the continuation of some of these girls' higher education has been, has just been something that I'm trying to model my program after as well. The other example that comes to mind, have any of you guys met Karlos Ramirez and heard him introduce you to any women-owned businesses? Because if you have not yet had that happen, put it on your bucket list.
Wow, I was gonna do that one, but I guess TC can take that example. I'm gonna go with 3 key male positive impact that happened in my life. I started talking about my mom. Well, I'm gonna give it to my dad. I'm 44. My mom started working maybe 40 years ago. So think about that. South America, Argentina was kind of what Carlos brought up. Mostly men working here as well too. And I never saw my dad saying no to my mom or pulling her down, right? He was always positive about it. He was always very supportive, and I never heard him complain or say anything negative. So that kind of, again, at that time, I wasn't thinking about it. But then when I was working, I was recently married. We were both working. My wife had a better job than me, and she was working more hours than me. And I was like, why are you working? So I was kind of started complaining to her, and then just kind of clicked in my head. It's okay, let's just go to what my dad have done and support her, right? Because there will be times where maybe I am working more, and I'm hoping she will support me. So that happened, obviously, where I started working a lot more, and now my wife is supporting me on time-wise, right? So my dad was able to help me with that, specifically with my wife, right? That, hey, if my dad did it with my mom, why can I not do it? Then my first really working experience was when I started a financial advising company, and there was a lot of young financial advisors, and the CEO of the company, large company, he took under his wing a young female advisor, and he was mentoring a lot of us, but he was really mentoring her, not because he liked her, because he wanted to make sure that she believed in herself, right? He wanted to make sure that, hey, this is more a male industry, but you are capable of doing this, you can do this. So I kind of, again, that touched me and said, okay, this is really good mentoring from the CEO at the time. And I saw the advisor, a couple months ago, and she's still there. She's still doing phenomenal. So obviously that mentoring was key for her. And like I said before, I worked in a large corporation where a lot of female partners, managers, and what I learned from them, it was really not about gender. Well, we got to get diversity because women and men. It was more about coaching and trying to mentor to have the right team based on skills, right? So once we started doing that, instead of just say, well, we got to have so many women, so many men, it was more about what are the right skills that these female managers, female leaders can bring to this team that can improve that. So that's what really changed my mind. It's not about numbers. It's not about who is who. It's about skills. Obviously, as we all know, women and men, for the most part, we have different skills. So that's kind of I learned from them. So those 3 keys, 3 moments really impact my business and my life. And I hope that to TC, maybe we'll have 3 more in the next 10 years. So,
well, I think that's an awesome example that you shared about your dad, and then you catching yourself and saying, I need to follow my dad's example. I could echo a lot of what you guys said, but I'm going to share a little bit more of a behind the scenes example. And I do have 2 examples, but for me, the most behind the scene example is as I've been working and I turn into a boss, right? And I'm hiring people. It's never occurred to me to lowball a woman, for example, and so like I'm trying to offer the best compensation possible. And because I have had such a positive experience with women over men, and even though I know women may have a harder time negotiating, pushing back, trying to get more than men may have, but I never wanted to put them in that situation, because if I saw somebody that was willing to work really hard and had a great skill set and that I could help them get to a next level, I wasn't even going to mess around. I was trying to give them the top of the salary. We have it budgeted. And so why not just try to get them started on a positive foot? They know that I value them. I value what they're going to bring to the table, because right off the bat, I'm just giving them the top of the salary range that I could give them. And I think for the most part, I haven't had too many examples where it backfires on me. And I think it's really important that from the beginning, you're championing them. You're letting them know that I totally believe in you. You're going to be great. and it's nice to hear, Cortez. It was a nice compliment to me, but like, I really want to uplift women, and whether it's introducing a business owner to other people, I think it's really important. The last example I'll share is in my final couple of years at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we started seeing way more statistics of women entrepreneurs being more prevalent than men entrepreneurs. I knew because of my higher ed background, there were more women and more Latinas specifically going to college than men and Latinos. And so for me, just continuing a women's leadership program, and making that happen and starting the implementation process. And I had a lot of women on my staff, so it was really easy to support them in that and say, yeah, absolutely, let's go down this road, because that is the growing population, and we need to celebrate that. So it was pretty cool, that those examples. And I think it's incredible that we really can have an impact on other people, and women specifically as men. And I think it's our obligation to try to uplift all communities. And I think it's great. And I applaud you both for what it is that you guys are doing now. So I really appreciate the insights from both of you. But let's talk a little bit about some of the strategies you've implemented or witnessed that effectively build inclusive communities where women feel empowered and supported.
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Cici. I'm a simple guy. My strategy is listening and embrace. As we all talk here, we have a lot of women in our house listening. So ask. Especially, when you have people at work that are female or teenagers, we ask. Obviously, if it's a teenager at home, she's not going to talk much, but at least we ask, right? At work, we get to know them. That's my strategy. Just get to know them, talk to them, get to know them personally, find the why. Why are they there? Why are they trying to take to the next role? Why are they trying to do this kind of business? And the one key is avoid the labels. We learn, right? I work in a large corporation with a lot of people, different backgrounds, different everything. So literally is avoiding labels. I don't care where you're coming from. I don't care if you're female or male. Just get to know you, right? Listen to you, and then embrace it. Embrace it that we're all different, right? Embrace it that you come from different places. Embrace it that you are a female worker, a female manager, that, to Karlos and Tizi, you have maybe different experience, right? So I truly embrace that, and then promote that. Hey, it's okay that you have a different background. It's okay that, maybe in the past we were not promoting women the way that we're promoting now. Let's embrace that, and let's just figure out how we can do better, right? And I brought it up early. Women are very strong. We just have to embrace that. There's history, right? That, we think that, how men and women were different in work. We feel like it's a long time ago, but it might be like only 30, 40 years ago. So it seems like a long time, but that is not that far away, right? So we got to understand that, there are differences. Unfortunately, sometimes they're correct, sometimes they're not. So I like to listen, get to know them, get to know the why, and then embrace it. Let them be them. Coach them, like I know Karlos likes to coach a lot of people, and TC based on your coaching as well. So let them coach, but let them be them.
That's literally it. It's like listening to who people are, where they're trying to go, and then if you're in a mentor capacity, right? If you're trying to empower and lead and build people up, understanding where they're trying to go, and then meeting them where they are to determine what the next steps are, right? So if you have somebody here and you meet them here, the next step that you have for them is different than where they actually are. It becomes a gap that's so big, it almost looks insurmountable. So understanding where that person is, where they're trying to go, and then meeting them there so that you can help them make that next step, no matter what their career goals or educational goals, or for me, basketball goals or life goals, whatever it may be. If someone is in your, in my sphere, that's the approach that I take: male, female, adult, child, whatever it may be. But I agree with Facundo. It all starts with listening.
I would echo a lot of that. And so a terminology that I like to use a lot is being strategic and intentional. And so when we talk about inclusivity, I am strategically, intentionally trying to make sure that we are including everybody, and if it's a quiet man, I would try to include them. In this case, in a workplace where it can be male dominated, I want to make sure that I'm being inclusive of them. And that's just asking them their opinion, and trying to treat everybody equal. So if someone is quiet, male or female, bring them to the forefront. If someone has a great idea, male or female, bring it to the forefront. But at the end of the day, it's being intentional about being inclusive of the population, I think is really important. And the fact that we're taking an interest in what their growth is, what their development is, by asking them, not deciding for them, not mansplaining to them what they should want, but really asking them, where do you want to go and how do I help you get there? And I think that that's one of the things that all three of us, I think, would echo and have mentioned. And I think that's so insightful. But I also know that it's not easy all the time. So with that, let's transition to the next question. What are some common challenges you have faced or seen other men face when trying to champion women? And how can they overcome these obstacles to create meaningful change? And I'm gonna mix up the order here, and I'm actually gonna go first because I want to make sure we're not afraid to talk about this topic.
No, I wanted to go first. No.
All right, you go for it.
No, go ahead.
All right, so I would say that one of the challenges that is very common for a man trying to do things to help women is that the perception that we're trying to date them, that we're trying to get together with them.
That's a good point.
And so I think that's a very common perception that either other guys would label us as, or other women would just wait to see what is that guy's intention really, and I think it's really important for us to know our own integrity, know that, okay, that's fine. If that's where your mind is and that's where you're taking it, I understand it's been a rough road for you as women in the workplace, but I think we have to have enough confidence in ourselves. And, maybe it serves as like a check, to make sure, what are my intentions? I don't think those are my intentions, but making sure that we're really trying to help with genuine interest in helping someone to advance. And I think that's sometimes one of the problems that men perceive. Now, I think some men have taken it too far in that because of the Me Too movement. Some men want to act like, well, no, I'm not going to get near you. I don't want you to say, that I did this, did that. But I honestly think that that's not necessarily very kind. I think that's in a way misleading, and it's intimidating, and it's lazy, quite frankly. Because if truly your intention is not to invade a woman's space, not to intrude on who she is, and your intentions are good, you would have no fear of being accused of that. And I think that may be one of the fears and one of the pitfalls that us as men could potentially fall into when we are trying to help women.
Yeah. I think you hit on some key points, but I still think that in the midst of that, there's still an underlying fear that we still have to navigate. That balance is kind of delicate, but you talk about the question being, what are some of the pitfalls? One of the ones that I think that we fall into, and you mentioned a great word, is mansplaining earlier, right? We fall into this thought process that they need us to be a champion. They need us for the solution. And quite honestly, most of the times they don't. And even just as human beings, sometimes we're just trying to talk out loud. Sometimes we're just trying to vet our thought processes with the people that are around us, male, female, what have you. And that's just our process. And then there are some times where you actually do want to talk through something and need advice or suggestions, but it's not on the listener to determine what scenario we're in. A lot of times I think men fall victim to solving a problem that actually hasn't been asked of them to solve.
Yeah. Before you answer, Facundo, I do want to say that I think it's really important that we are, when I asked you guys to speak on this podcast, I wanted to make it very clear that we're experts in how we think about these topics. The fact that we as men are talking about how we can better help women, that doesn't mean they need us to. Mm-hmm. But I think every community that is not the prominent community can benefit from a hand up. And so I think that's why we're covering this. And so if there happens to be anybody listening, they're thinking that, well, why are these men talking about women and how they're going to be successful? Well, we're experts in how we can help with that. We're not saying that we're the answer. We're not saying that anybody needs us, quite frankly. But, I would love to hear in the chat box, what are your thoughts on this? What are we missing? What can we do better? And where do we miss something? Because we can still learn as well. But anyway, Facundo, please.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what you all say. I think the one thing that I will add is that the biggest challenge is that we think that we're all the same. And I brought it up multiple times, right? Especially maybe in the business world for women, right? Society has changed or is changing and will continue to change. So it doesn't mean that what men have done in the past for sales jobs or other type of jobs is what women have to be doing now, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge. We all have to be creative. We have to be creative. Doesn't mean if I'm coaching somebody and this person is in sales, right? I'm into sales right now. I have somebody in the office. Right? I play golf, so I can go and play golf and meet customers and all the stuff because that's what I like. That's me, right? This new salesperson in my office, she might not be interested in golf at all. So if that's not what she loves, she doesn't need to be doing that. She could be doing something else, right? So again, we're not all the same. What does it say? Past performance does not guarantee future results, right? Because we've done in the past. Women now in the workforce have to do it? No. I think, Karlos, you know this person very well. She's a very successful financial advisor in this community. And her husband is a financial advisor as well. And she doesn't golf, and her husband does. So a lot of her clients come, he takes them golfing. Well, a lot of her clients, she loves art, right? So she does more of that. And she's very clear about that. So I think the biggest challenge is, especially maybe and again, to your point, we're not expert. I am not expert at all. Maybe for older people who are trying to change, it's like, well, if I did it this way, you should do it this way.
Mm-mm.
We're not all the same, right? So yes, we can coach and we can tell them what we've done, right? I can teach my daughters what I think is the best, but at the end, they have to make the decision. So that's my biggest challenge is that we're not all the same. Society is changing. We got to be creative. And I think women are very smart and they are becoming very creative. So to TC point, they don't need us. They have done all their creativity and they're doing their way. So,
excellent points. And so as we wrap up, I'd like to ask both of you for one piece of advice you'd give to sustain the momentum of women's empowerment initiatives and ensure long-term positive impact within communities. Facundo, let's start with you.
Just like any long-term project, whatever you want, persistency, right? Everything is changing. It will continue to change, right? Like TC, evolution, persistency. Persistency doesn't mean, right, that we do the same thing over and over and expect different results. It means that we continue to work and know that women are key in our society and women are going to hopefully take over. And, that's because I have two young daughters. I hope that they will take over. But it's persistency. Now you got to make sure that, hey, let's put a pause. What have we done? Is this the right thing? Are we going to where we wanted to go? Yes. Okay. Keep going. No. Let's make changes. So again, persistency with willingness to make changes in the process.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. The first word that came to my mind was consistency. Consistency is key. So very, very, very similar line of thinking. I also think that as we're trying to solve the world's problem, like one of the underlying mantras that I have is you change a world, you change the world. So it doesn't have to be this all-inclusive solution. You can identify one person in your community, in your sphere that you can influence, that you can help support. You change one person's world, you're changing the world. You continue to repeat that. Again, consistency though. You can continue to repeat that formula and we'll get the type of systemic change, the exponential change that we're all looking for.
Yeah, I definitely consistency is a great word. I would also add intentionally, and genuine, because I think that we need to be genuine about what we're doing. not because we're expecting, all these women to think, oh, he's so great, he loves women, he champions them. Like, I think it needs to be genuine, it needs to be intentional for sure. And so I think those are really important things that we can do. And I think understanding that they don't need us to do it, they've been doing just fine. But I think every community can use help. And lastly, I would add that I think as men, it's helpful to read books from a woman's perspective. So like for me, and I would recommend this author, Isabel Allende, and she's a Chilean author, and all of her books, it's historical fiction, but all of her books always has a heroine at the center of the book. And I think that when you start reading books from those perspectives, you start understanding a little bit of the challenges that women have gone through over time, and I think that just can give you such a good insight. I honestly would also welcome you guys to both read Women Are From Mars, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Like, that book is overwhelming, but it's just so much of I think that's maybe the origins of, we don't need to mansplain, we just need to listen, and the book's overwhelming, but I really think it does help it helps explain the differences between men and women. So I think this is wonderful advice from both of you. Facundo, Cortez, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. Facundo, TC, Cortez.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Great. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mente Maestra. Remember, great leadership starts with self-awareness and continuous growth. Stay inspired, and we'll see you next time.